Parenting's hard, you don't know what to do. You're blaming your kids, but it's probably you. You love your kids and that you can trust. Just remember your kids don't suck.
Welcome to Your Kids Don't Suck, cultivating closeness with your children through non-coercive conscious parenting. We're your hosts, Cara Tedstone and Rythea Lee. Let's dive in and grow together.
Welcome back to Your Kids Don't Suck. And it is a Q&A episode. We're going to answer questions that people have sent us, either through social media or through email. We're going to pick two questions and go at it. Today, we're going to talk about siblings. People are always asking us about that. And we're also going to talk about, what's the other thing, Cara?
Co-parenting.
Co-parenting. Oh my God. What if you co-parent with someone who's so not on board with non-authoritarian parenting? So that's what we're going to tackle. Thanks for being here. Thanks for following us. And Cara's going to read the first question.
Okay, so this is a question from a listener. They have a 4-year-old daughter and they sent us this email. They said, "How do you handle situations where your child has a conflict with friends? My daughter has a weekly play date with a friend and they often want to play with the same toy or have disagreements about what kind of game to play. What kinds of things can I do to support my daughter as she learns to form relationships and overcome conflict in these situations? I definitely want to steer clear of shaming either her or her friend or making them feel bad in any way about their wants." Rythea had made a video about conflict it was sibling relationships specifically, wasn't it, Rythea, on TikTok?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that because I felt like you kind of covered. I mean, I actually haven't watched it in a while. I watched it when it first was posted. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like at the beginning you were talking about what is so important about the role that the parent plays and what that looks like. And then you gave practical advice.
Yeah. I'm a parent who really believes, and a parent advocate and a child advocate who believes that parents should get involved with conflict
Mm-hmm.
with children and siblings. And I have seen, obviously, children who work things out so beautifully. It happens all the time. It's wonderful. But parents who see their kids fighting and just say, "You work it out. This is not for me. This is for you to work out." I just can't stand that. I can't stand that. And a lot of the reasons I can't stand that is because my clients, my trauma clients, tell me stories year after year after year of being left alone with their siblings and having all this terrible shit happen and never getting any help for it. And I just can't stand it. So I just don't believe that children work it out. They
Mm-hmm.
don't work it out. Sometimes they just reenact year after year and someone gets very, very hurt, or both kids get very hurt, or their self-esteems get crushed, or they don't learn about how things resolve, and they don't have tools, and they don't get help, and they don't get empathy. And, and I just don't believe children work it out on their own. And I think parents should stop saying that.
Mm-hmm. The same applies when you're at a playground and there's a parent who's not there guiding their kid. I see that a lot. I think I've talked about it on the show before. And there are moments where children do need guidance from their parents. This is not what non-coercion is about, which is, as we've said, it's not hands-off approach. It's actually a really thoughtful family systems approach to navigating things like conflict. And when I see parents at the park kind of just, you don't know whose kid is whose, like that's a big red flag because anything could be happening and the parents aren't there to guide. So I think it's really important what you're saying, that we need to get involved when there's conflict in our house.
Right. And it's one thing, I understand parents can't be with their children every second and be at every play date and be, but you have parents on a playground and the parents are right over there. They're just right over there not paying attention,
Yeah.
And I also remember being a kid and feeling really stuck in terrible situations with no help. When people hear about non-coercive parenting, their first reaction is, "Oh, that's permissive. You just don't do anything." And no, that's not true. We've talked about that. But people also believe that if you're too involved, children won't develop.
Mm-hmm.
Like they won't develop on their own. They won't learn it if you're walking them through it. And I have to say, I have been a real attachment parent person. I've stayed really close to my daughter through all kinds of challenging situations. And that has not made her dependent on me in her relationship. She's got lots of friendships and they navigate it beautifully. And she doesn't need me. She's 12. She doesn't need me most of the time. But for a long, long time, she did.
Would she ask you to get involved or how did that
Oh,
play
yeah.
out? Yeah.
I was just around a lot and I pay attention and
Mm,
just be there and when I would get involved, she would welcome it and her friends would welcome it. And I really believe in getting curious with whatever's happening and be like, hey, what's going on? Can I help? Oh, you look upset. We're just talking about 4-year-olds now. Let's be like, hi, what's happening? Can I help?
mm,
Oh, are you crying? She hit me. She hit you? Oh my gosh, how are you feeling? Why did you hit her? What's happening? And just be non-judgmental. Don't come over and take over. Don't come and shame anybody. Don't grab
mhm,
things out of people's hands. Just get curious and listen and help with empathy for both kids, no matter what's happening. Don't
mhm.
make assumptions. And children always tell you. They go, they usually want help and they tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that we can shame our kids, like either explicitly or implicitly, but some of those ways can also just look like dismissal, like just being like, stop crying, it's not a big deal. Okay, you need to share, just do it, come in and swoop in and
Right.
tell them what to do directly. That's just dismissing their feelings. And I understand why parents want to fix the problem right away, but getting curious is the first step to really understanding the problem in the first place so that you can guide towards a solution. And part of the guiding towards a solution, it involves and requires your empathy.
Right. And not making assumptions and not taking over and not fixing it, which is really, really, really hard for people.
Yeah.
And especially parents, they're rushed. They want to get back to what they're doing. The kids are playing. They can't be interrupted. I mean, there's also like time, space, class issues in terms of, a lot of what I do is play with the kids when they're
Mhm.
having a hard time. I also love to have both kids put their attention on me when they're fighting. So I'll be like, "Oh no, don't hit my pillow." Or they'll get a big pillow from the couch and they'll just put all of their stuff on me or like, "Somebody catch me," or like, "Well, I maybe I should try it." And then I keep doing it wrong and it makes them both laugh or like, you know, "I won." They'll be like, "She said that she won, but I won." And I'll be like, "No, it's me. I won." And then we'll all start fighting. It'll be really funny, just like to get the tension off of each other and onto me.
Mhm.
That's one thing I did a lot.
Yeah. The question around like the listener saying I want to steer clear of shaming either her or her friend or making them feel
Right.
bad in any way, and I'm curious about what it is that they currently do. Um on the other end of the spectrum, like we just talked about stepping back and saying you figure it out, doesn't necessarily have to look like that, but can feel like that to the kids. If we're trying to cultivate like this sense of like, I don't want to shame you, I don't want to wrong you, I don't want to make you feel bad. Sometimes that can almost be paralyzing for people. And then you find yourself being like, what the fuck do I do? And I just hope that people are hearing us and are able to walk away with some like practical strategies. Like playing with the situation can be helpful. But what else? What else is there? We should maybe give them some tools.
I guess I'll just go into the sibling thing.
Yeah.
Um, I really suggest that when people have siblings that are fighting, which is very, very common, is to have family meetings and to ask the children, what should we do? Say, I'm noticing you're fighting a lot. I'm noticing so and so's hitting so and so. I know you're calling so and so names. I see that one of you's crying. I see you're locking her out of your room. Whatever, you just notice, you say, this is what's happening. And I want to help. And I don't know what to do. I really
Mhm.
don't know what to do. I've tried this, I've tried that. What should I do? And you get out a piece of paper. Let's write it down. Anyone have any suggestions? And you start writing down. And sometimes kids really, like suggest wild things like, you should ring a bell and that means we have to stop and then and then everybody should have to say I'm sorry. And then, they come up with a whole plan. You write it all down. You're like, okay, I'm going to try that. Any other ideas, And it's hard to problem solve like right now without thinking of different ages because teenagers are so different than
Mhm.
younger kids. And then little kids are really different than, you know,
Mm.
10, 12, 13-year-old, um, I so I was coaching a dad who, when his kids were younger, he was very, very authoritarian, angry, explosive, aggressive, even physically violent with his kids. And then he had an awakening and he had this big opening because his sister confronted him about his behavior with his kids. And I don't know, he had this big opening where he realized that he was causing all the pain in his family. Like he was really the cause of it. He finally like woke up to it, which is just so rare and unusual. And so I was doing a session with him, and he said, and my kids are fighting, and when they're fighting, they look just like me. They're acting to each other just like I did to them. They're doing even some of the same things and using some of the same words. And I was like, okay, great. Well, when they're fighting, I want you to go in and stop them and say, hey, I think you're fighting because of me. I think you're all acting like I used to act. And I feel so sad that I somehow caused this. I know that it's my fault. And he started doing that, and the kids would just like totally stop in their tracks. And they would end up having talks about how mean he used to be, and they would process it. And that's how he would get them to process it. Every time they had a fight, he'd stick himself in there, and things got better and better. He also started really spending time with each kid.
Mm.
So that's another thing. Kids often fight because they're actually vying for the attention. And they can't get the full attention because there's always the other kid around. And it's really hard. I don't know how people who don't have time make time for each kid. They don't have childcare, but you can find ways, even if it's like a half an hour here and a half an hour there, to give your undivided attention to each child. That
Yeah,
can make
sometimes
a huge difference.
yeah, like having that on the schedule can be helpful if you're finding that coming up. I know people that I've talked to when they introduce a new baby, right? That's when you'll almost always see some differences in the older child. This obviously is age dependent, but especially with younger children, you'll see a lot of changes and vying for the parent's attention and connection seeking behavior, right? Obviously, when the new baby is there. So those are times where you might actually tell your child that you're going to put it on the schedule of the day, that every day at 9 o'clock you get special time. And then every day at, after nap, you get special time, and you like make a schedule for your kid. You can even collaborate with your toddler on like when that is. After snack, like maybe when you wake up, what do you think? You can have a conversation. But I love that. I love special time. I love emphasizing connection uninterrupted as much as possible. Some parents will
Right,
say,
like a time, you put your phone away, you
put
time
your
it, you
phone
say,
away.
look,
Yeah.
when this bell goes off, we're gonna do this until the bell goes off. Then you time it for 20 minutes, and you just put your phone away and just completely focus on your kid.
Yeah. So those are good, like connection, like cup filling sort of opportunities for your child. When I'm with kids, and like when I'm with my daughter and her friends and there's conflict, they're very young toddlers, like 2-ish. Um, I will do just a lot of sports casting and being like, oh wow, he took your toy. Oh, like is that sad? And they're crying, and I'll just like do what you were saying, Rathia, and then it's into guided solution hunting. I would call it, like, it's collaborative in terms of talking to both kids and figuring out what we should do next. So I might ask questions about that process. Like I'll intentionally say like, what do you think we should do? And then
Right.
they might say like, well, I want it now. And I'll say, yeah, you really want it now. And they're playing with it and they took it from you and you're sad. And they'll be like, yeah. And then I'll say like, I wonder if we could ask for a turn. And they'll be like, okay. And then we'll ask for a turn. And if the child says no, I say, they're not ready to share it yet. Wow. Really, that's hard. And that sucks. And I'm just kind of there in that
Right.
moment. And it sounds maybe like, I wonder if I'm maybe conscious of like the backlash that I get in my own head, like how ridiculous or like how simple or how obvious maybe. But I think it's maybe not so obvious when you're really in that moment, and the part of you that wants to fix it kind of just takes over. I think if you can slow down and really just be in that moment with those kids, and the mindset becomes like, okay, I'm here with you to notice all of the, first of all, behave like the things that have happened, right? Like the piece by piece, play by play, and then narrate that. And then part two of that is to really try to label for them the feelings or ask them. I'm hesitant to kind of tell my daughter like, oh, that made you mad. Because maybe it's not mad. Maybe it's more hurt, right? I don't always know what the feeling is. So I try to ask them about what their feelings are and then collaboratively hunt for a solution, which looks really just like simply asking questions. What should we do? I don't know. Wow. I
Well,
wonder
how
if we
does
could
that
ask
go?
them. It goes well. We move through it. We move through it. And sometimes somebody's upset for a while, but then I'm able to ask that kid what they might need when they're upset, right? So I can ask them like, oh, you wanted longer with the toy. Wow. I wonder if next time when she's done with it, we can give you a way longer time, or we could take it over there and play with it, or we could do a new game and maybe we could play with the garbage trucks instead and put some things in there. Like that really works. But I think also part of that is me having worked with children for a very long time and being creative with play. Like I can quickly look around the room, come up with a game in 2 seconds, that again basically removes the focus off the conflict. And my emphasis is on, can we all play together? Is there a way we can all play together? If not, and one of the kids needs just to feel their feelings, that's okay. They can just feel their feelings. I'm trying to get to a solution though that is collaborative at the end. I don't want it to be a situation where, oh, sorry, buddy, like she took your toy. Oh, it's okay to cry. Too bad. Like you'll get over it, or, go have your tantrum over there and we're going to keep playing. Like I don't
Right.
want to invalidate either member of the situation ever.
Right.
So I try to really just come to a collaborative solution in the end. And it does take me kind of like getting right literally physically with my body in there. Like I'll sit with them, talk to them, ask them questions. And I don't like it when one kid just goes off and then it's kind of that's the end of that, because I would like to know that that child feels that they've been heard too, and that something,
Right.
something that they were seeking in that need was met right at the end of the day. I just really don't like it when kids are kind of off to their own devices feeling their feelings. I don't like that piece to sometimes the gentle parenting advice that we see. Like it's okay to cry, you can just cry, let it out. It's like, well, sometimes that's appropriate if you can't meet the need, but if you can and there's a way to guide to a solution, try to do that, I would say.
Yeah. You're making me remember. So my daughter, I got divorced when she was 2.5, and she very shortly became a hitter and started hitting kids all the time. And I couldn't actually leave her at all because she hit
Right.
people so quickly.
Right.
So I actually had to have my body right there, my arm ready to put my arm
Yeah.
out, and we had a play group because we did homeschool play group, and we had the same group of people like twice a week, like 2 different mornings. And I had to say, when we made an agreement, because these were friends of mine, listen, when Tori is starting to hit, I'm going to just give my attention to her. Could you give your attention to your kid?
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't, because I had to help her right away,
Mm-hmm.
or she would just keep hitting. So I had to like throw my body in the middle. Like I'd be get in the middle, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, you're getting upset. Come here. I'm gonna pick you up and bring you over here." And then I'd have to help
Yeah.
her. Like, "What's going on, honey? I
Yeah.
see you're getting upset. I see you're hitting. Blah blah blah." And then the other person would attend to their kid who sometimes had just gotten hit.
Well, I just wanted to interrupt you because I have actually personally heard of some stories where parents are trying to do non-coercion or something similar, and they end up just like, so there's a hitter, right? Especially because hitting is a big topic with younger
Yes.
kids. Any sort of like where physical pain is happening, parents
Yeah.
get, of course, naturally, you're going to get very triggered and like want to solve that and figure that out. I hear a lot parents who don't know what to do in those moments, and they end up just comforting their kid. They don't want to shame them. They don't want to punish them, but then they don't actually end up like meeting the other child's need in that situation, which is for validation, right? Even if you're not going to go over if there's a situation where there's two parents. I like that, Rythea, you said you would have that other parent step in. If you're alone though, and there's
Right.
another child and your child
Right.
hits that child, you've still got to address that other child is what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say. You cannot
Absolutely.
just like be like, oh, my love, like you hit him and you're upset and like, I'm so sorry, and just like comfort them. And that other
Right.
child then is over there like really feeling like a piece of shit. Like that's going to feel
No.
so isolating. And
No, you'd have to be like, "Ow!" Like I also would show Tori, like, "Oh, look, ow, that really hurt." So and so
yes.
there, yeah,
And I love to like, because in that situation, you said you tell the other parent explicitly. Like, I also love that. I love the idea of parents almost like telling other parents, like, hey, here's how you can help me now, or here's how you can step in like that. I think we should like, the word normalizes everywhere these days. I'm like trying not to say it, but that's the word coming to mind. I think that we should just agree as parents that we're all going to step in, and that like if my child was hitting another child and another parent said to me, hey, can you step in with your kid and I'm going to tend to my kid, I'd be like, absolutely. I'm here. Like, let's
right.
all get involved. Let's like all agree that like when we're around and our kids need us, that we are going to be there to guide them.
I've also had parents really harshly reprimand my daughter, which is another reason why I have to stay right there. I mean, not these people that I had this group with, but where people
That's
would be like,
horrible. And I really like,
not in our house. We don't do that in our house. Blah, 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 stuff. I'm like, oh my God.
It's just, that's another like conversation probably for another time, but that can
Yes.
also make parents feel so fucking incompetent. Like when
Right.
another parent steps over you and then says stuff to your kid. I mean,
I know.
the authority and like the power, like hunger that parent is exhibiting in that moment. I mean, it's just, there's just no need of that. And I think that we all need to like put, on our like almost like family mediator hats, like therapist hats, and think like, okay, what is really going to be effective, helpful, and like what's appropriate here? The appropriate thing to do is to make sure that all of the kids feel validated and supported in some way. And you can't always solve it every time, so it's perfect and happy. But to like, ignore someone's needs or shame a kid or overstep onto another parent. I mean, these are just not okay. These are not okay things to do.
But see, the main thing that parents say is that you have to tell your child it's wrong.
Yeah, because otherwise there's no
And
justice.
well, also they will think it's okay, and you have to say
Mhm.
that. You have to say to them, that is not okay.
You have to
For
teach
parents.
them in that moment.
Yes, in that moment, you have to teach them that what they did was not okay, or they'll think it's okay, and then they'll just do it all the time. Now I know we probably have said this before, but I'll just say with my child, she knew that it was not okay. I didn't even say that to her, but she knew she didn't want to do that, and she felt really out of control. And so I had to help her with her impulse because she was going through a loss of her mother and nursing and everything, and that's how she was coping with it. And she did not, and telling her it was wrong was absolutely not helping and couldn't help.
Well,
So
children do well when they can. Children hit when they can't think of another tool to use. That's what's
right.
happening. So there's no learning happening when a child is dysregulated. That's one of the first things that parents need to hear. You can't learn when you're dysregulated. So
And if you
trying to
yell at them and shame them, they just get more dysregulated and their brain doesn't actually go, oh, okay.
yeah, it doesn't come online to actually internalize that lesson. So there's no point in doing that. I hear the reason for that. Like I said at the beginning, I was like, it's justice. It's like, I think parents really want to also like to, yes, have their kid learn this lesson, but also they want justice. They want, like, I've heard stories from parent contacts of mine that'll say like, so-and-so hit my son and they didn't even do anything. And that's just like, how are they ever gonna, and that's so not okay because my son was hurt and da 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 da. Like, it's really all about like this sense of justice. That kid should be punished, really, is what that parent is saying.
Oh,
And
interesting.
there's really no need. I want people to understand that you really don't have to use punishment to get that kid to understand what happened and why it's wrong, because I'm telling you, they already know.
They already know.
They really
That's what I
already know.
saw
And
with my daughter. She already knew.
knew. She knew when she
Yeah.
was probably 1. I mean, I know for my daughter, I can clearly see when she's done something wrong. I mean, like spilling my drink or whatever it is, she looks at me with this like shock of horror. I've never shamed her for doing anything like that. But she just knows that we don't do that. We don't spill drinks. We don't hit people. We don't bite. We don't hurt. We don't do stuff like that. These are not behaviors that she's witnessing all the time, right? So she doesn't know, or sorry, she does know that they're wrong, right? And she doesn't know what these behaviors, she doesn't have an idea about these behaviors being anything other than impulsive, anything other than I can't think of anything else to do, so I'm going to do that.
Well, no one, see, the thing is, no one ever hit my daughter. She was not hit. She was not around hitting. It was just something, it was the best her brain could come up with how powerless she was feeling in her life. And luckily I knew that. I knew that's why that was happening. And I just would work with her for years and years, big tantrums for years. And she hit me for years and she got bigger and bigger. And sometimes she really fucking hurt me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she felt really, really bad about it. And she worked through it. It took a long time. We did a lot of people ask me a lot, what did you do with your daughter when she was tantruming? Do you think I should just answer that?
Yeah, I think so. Cause it's related to this question of like, how do we navigate conflict, right? If say another child set her off or something, or maybe that wasn't the actual trigger, but meltdown ensues. So tell us, then what'd you do?
So we did a lot of wrestling and hitting pillows.
Yeah.
And play, but also just letting her rage. She had
Yeah.
we had like this big styrofoam thing that she would try to hit me with, and it didn't hurt when it hit me, styrofoam.
Yeah.
So she would hit me with this big styrofoam thing, and I would run around and block it, and we'd do warriors, and she'd be truly mad. She'd be like rage crying, like,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't know why. I mean, I knew why,
Yeah.
but she didn't know why. And Yeah, it was just like a lot of physical play and a lot of like directing her rage at an object and not me. Like a lot of getting a pillow and hitting a pillow together and like holding the pillow in front of me and she would kick and punch it. And when she really wanted to hit me, it was so hard for her to switch over to the pillow.
Yeah.
But she did. And then sometimes she'd just like come at me with her fists at my head. And I'd have to very gently. It was very triggering for me, but I have to hold her little arms down. Like I'd have to hold her for a second, then let go and kind of do that over and over again so she wouldn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
She hated that. I hated that. I wouldn't really even say it was restraining her because I didn't hold her for very long, but I just kept her. I kept her from hitting me.
Right.
And I would say, I know you don't want to hurt me, so I'm just going to help you not hurt me. I would say, no, I'm going to help you not hurt me. And she'd
Mm-hmm.
go, I want to hurt you.
Mm.
I'd be like, okay, I know you really want to, I know you really want to hurt me, but like, you know, I'm just going to help you do it this way. And I did that for years and years. And there was also like eventually it took a long time because she actually didn't cry for years. My daughter did not cry. She just raged.
Mm.
She went from like being okay to raging. Those were kind of the two states. And eventually she started crying. And then eventually she would like rage and then have a big cry. And I think things got a lot better when she started crying.
Well, I kind of wanted to like stay with the anger thing because I know that that comes up a lot at home too, especially in like multiple kid situations.
Yeah.
Rage is a very scary emotion, like not only for like the people watching it, but the person experience it. So I want to stay there a little bit because when you're dealing with conflict with multiple kids and one kid like has these like rage outbursts, I see families who are navigating that pretty regularly, and that's very difficult for families. Like they really are telling me like I don't know what the fuck to do because my kid will get in a conflict situation with a sibling and before we know it like we're trying to help but then the kid is absolutely like losing their shit, slamming doors, punching things, hitting, kicking, screaming, and then shut down afterwards, doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And that's very difficult. What I love about what you're saying is you gave them the opportunity to feel the anger. Whereas in most houses, anger is a very shameful emotion, a very scary emotion. And like, please help me. Basically, the parents are saying, like, we need this to stop. We need this to stop. If that's
Right.
your attitude towards anger as a parent, that will be felt by the kid and internalized as shame. So every time anger comes to the surface, we should also say like anger is a secondary emotion, right? It never walks alone. So underneath anger, there is something there. There is a reason for the anger that is not about the anger. It's not about the kid, brother took the computer away from the kid. It's not about that. It's never about that. So to shame anger, when you internally feel as a parent very scared or upset or triggered by anger, and you don't provide opportunities for your kid to feel that anger and to express that anger safely without shame, without judgment, that child is going to basically it's a pressure cooker because they're going to be smushing it down, swallowing it,
Right.
swallowing it, swallowing it. And you're going to be stuck in this outburst situation, this cycle. So to break that cycle, you said it, you have to give your child opportunities to express their rage however it looks. So you kind of allowed her, I say allowed like in air quotes, I guess, but you invited Tori to hit because that's how she wanted to express that. That's beautiful because hitting is not then shamed and is not another thing she's got to swallow and try to, re-experience and hash out in another way. Like if you were like, why don't we go outside and spit all over the ground? But she doesn't have the impulse to spit in that moment. Like you can get
Right.
creative with anger. What I'm saying is basically like you can try and try and try and be like, here, why don't we go scream into the forest? Or, why don't you punch your pillow? And your kid doesn't want to do that. You
Yeah.
got to keep working to find what it is. What is your kid actually doing? What does that expression of anger look like in those moments that are organic? And then join them in that and see if you
Right.
can
That's great. That's a really great
accept it and
point.
open it, right? Like really, really, really like get in the anger with them, be in the anger with them and experience it in a non-judgmental way.
Right. And I feel like my daughter is really good at no. And she's also good at saying what she doesn't like because she was allowed to push it out, to
Yeah.
motor out. And, I also did try to name things for her as she got older. So she started the tantrums when she was like 3. And then they went on for at least 5 years. Um, and she was also a kid who like had to control what everybody said. I don't know if you've been like if we went out to dinner, she'd be like, "No, we're not talking about that. You don't talk and you talk." She was like
I
really
see that
needed to
all the time.
control. Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
so intense.
Yeah.
It was so intense. you know, and I just to see her powerlessness, how powerless she felt. And it wasn't just because of the divorce was really traumatizing, but it was also because her dad parented so differently than me. And so she
Yeah.
had to work through that. And you know, and is just a very different person, just having suddenly two homes and just, you know, so many things. But something I was gonna say, I just wanted to, there was a couple things you said that I wanted to piggyback on. One was, oh yeah, with littler kids you can do a lot of drawing anger, like have them like you know, scribble or draw things of things blowing up, or like people are so scared of doing that because they're like they feel like they're like encouraging violence.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't feel that that is accurate. What creates violence is when people when kids have to repress
Exactly.
their feelings. So
Exactly.
actually saying, "Oh, let's blow some stuff up on paper," and you draw like ships being blown up or whatever, you know, or just like with littler kids, you can scribble. You say, "Why don't you scribble? Show me how you're angry you are," and you scribble with them, or like, you know, yeah, just giving space and permission for the feeling of anger, and
Yeah.
then parents have to work on their triggers with what happened to them when they got angry. That's what gets in the way. Like most of us got punished or hit or spanked or like
Or
put in
yelled
a
at.
room. I got put in a room by myself. That's what happened to me whenever I got angry. It's like, oh, go
Yeah.
to your room and come out when you're ready to be happy. That's what my parents used to say.
Yeah.
And they would make me stay in there as a little kid for way too long. And it was so scary. Yeah, even being yelled at. Right.
That because the messaging of all of this, whether it's like delivered in that sort of a way, it's like being spanked, being punished overtly, or just being yelled at, or just being talked to in a way that communicates shame. You are not okay. This
Well,
is
how
not
dare
allowed.
you? How
How
dare
dare
you?
you? You
We
know,
don't
you need
talk
to,
like that in this house.
right, right. Or anything about the person behind the emotion, right? Like that is what I want parents to understand is anger is a feeling that has been silenced by society. It serves a very important purpose and it is a message from the nervous system. So it's a communication of a need. So we need to feel
Mm,
angry and we need to not tell our kids to shut the fuck up, basically, with our words or with our actions. We need to tell our
yes.
kids that feeling angry is a beautiful experience and it's needed and it's welcomed in our homes so that then they will feel it and not do the whole repress and blow up and act in ways that are 10 times worse than they would have in the first place in the moment of anger.
By the way, it's not always blow up. Like a lot of
Yeah.
times with people raised female, actually, they just turn it inwards
Mm-hmm.
and they become self-destructive and they
Mm-hmm.
doubt their opinion. They doubt their ability to say no. They doubt their opinions. They don't feel they can assert themselves. They hate themselves. They judge themselves. It just gets turned inward. It doesn't necessarily become something that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so horrible.
Mm.
And also, a lot of times, boys are encouraged to be angry, but then they never get to actually process the underlying feelings, right? So then they're raging all over the place, and that's fine. No one gets upset with that. Like, boys are just like that, blah, blah, blah. But then they actually never get to the emotion. They never get support to work through what was really going on. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole gender binary comes in here so much.
Yes. Yes, and what's so important is to really, I think, just remind parents that when it's conflict, when things are going on, when there's big feelings happening, the more you can get in there without shame and judgment and wrongness and invite expression, like really, I really
Mm.
want to hear you. I want to hear, this feeling that you have. And outside of that, if you're dealing with emotions that you're finding like they're coming up so much and you're not sure what to do, see if you can invite moments for those to come up like you did, Rythea, with the punching and the hitting and like the wrestling and the this and the that. Like that is such a cycle breaker for that because the feeling is being expressed and then you can move through it. It's being expressed and you can move through it. It's being expressed and you can move through it over and over and over.
But here's the thing. I was hit as a kid. I was abused as a kid in many, many different ways, emotionally, physically, sexually abused. I had a terrible childhood. So my kid hitting me was very, very, very triggering.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have to do my own work around it. And I did have to like get therapy about it and process. I mean, I had to do a lot of work during her tantrum years. And even when
Yeah.
she hit other kids, it was so triggering to me that she hit other kids. And then when I went to all these gatherings, I could never relax. I
Yeah.
could at parties, at even kids parties, like, play dates. Like, I didn't get off duty. I never got to get off duty. Now I'm really off duty a lot because my child has really turned into this like amazing human. But oh my God, I cannot tell you how hard I worked. I mean, I have PTSD from her tantrum years and her hitting kids. Like like even when she has sleepovers now, I get all anxious because of, just remembering.
Mm.
Anyway, so I just want to have empathy for parents. Like, yes, hitting is triggering. Of course, you don't want your kid to hit other kid. Of course, you don't want your one kid to hit your other kid. And you can say no, and you can get your buddy in there, and you can, it's not like we're not saying you should just allow it.
Mm-mm.
We're just saying that you don't have to judge and shame and come down on your kid and make it actually 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say, because I didn't get to finish this, Cara, is that about siblings who are hurting each other. They're emotionally hurting each other. They're saying cruel, mean things to each other, or one kid is hitting another kid and you don't know what to do and you're like freaking beside yourself. When you have that family meeting and you start writing down, what should I do? I really don't know what to do, and try to get 10 options on your sheet of what you should do. And some of them can be very serious and some of them can be really silly. You're going to say, okay, the next time I see you two fighting, I'm going to try number one. And
Mm.
then you do it. And you hear them fighting. You come and you go, wait. You told me to say rock, paper, scissors. And then everybody has to like get a turn, or like whatever. You do whatever's on the sheet. And then you try it and maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't work. If it works, you're like, oh my God, you guys are brilliant. This worked. I'm going to do it again next time. And then if it doesn't work, you say, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try number two. And like it becomes like a family project instead of it's like just the parents, like, how do I get it to stop?
Yes.
It becomes like a family collaborative process.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That's exactly what you would do in a family therapy session with the therapist, right? The therapist would come in and say, like, we're all going to work together. Everybody's going to get to say what they've been experiencing. Maybe, in family therapy, you might have sessions with each individual kid to really hear, more of what's going on. You can do that with your child too. You can have them alone. You can say, me and you, we're going to go on a special date. We're going to talk about it. And I'm going to ask you some questions about brother. And I really want you to tell me, what's going on? How are you feeling? How is that making you feel? What have you been experiencing, et cetera. Really get in
You
there
can also say, how am I doing? What do you wish I was doing?
Great. Yeah. Ask about, yes, how they're perceiving your role. That's wonderful, to really get in there and then go to the family meeting. Maybe it's after that. Maybe you have several, right? It's a process, but everybody's feeling seen, heard, and valued. That's so important.
Right. But the thing about the anger is a lot of times kids will blame you and you have to be able to deal with that. So my kid used to say, I hate you all the time. She used to say, I hate you. And her dad would say, I don't want you to talk to me like that. Like, I don't, I don't want to, I don't say that to you. I don't want you to say that to me. But I didn't do that. I really let her say she hate me. And I would say, really? You hate me? What did I do? And she'd be like, you don't care. I wouldn't get, I'm just happen to be very good at not getting defensive around this kind of thing. I guess because I always wanted that. I wanted it, and I wanted her to be able to let her anger come out however she wanted.
However it was. I love that. I think that's so important. That's such a good, people should write that down. Like when your kids are experiencing feelings towards you and they are coming out at you, take them.
Yeah, like be the safe person. And there's like people really believe that your child's going to end up doing it to everyone. It's like, well, if I let her call me stupid, she's going to call everyone stupid. And that is not what happened. My daughter, I was the safe person and she took it all out on me.
Yeah.
And I had to be there for it.
Yes. And that's why it's so important to try to cultivate your community of support that helps you through that, because you cannot be a container for that if you have nobody else.
Yeah, right.
You can't. You can't. You're going to need a friend.
Right.
You're going to need a co-counsel.
Right.
Like you're going to need something. You're going to need a therapist. I mean, I highly, obviously, always will recommend everybody gets a therapist if you can. Of course, that's a privileged thing to be able to seek out. So if you can't, find somebody. Like, who can you talk to about that? Because you need to be able to process that for yourself afterwards, because no parent is going to be able to just take somebody's feelings of like that level of personal attack, right? Like that's so difficult as a human being with feelings, especially your own child. It's extremely painful to be, to have to be the container of that. So parents, you really need to find a place to put all of those feelings afterwards. But the best thing you can do for your kid is to be that container and to welcome them, unfortunately.
Well, so she raged at me, but then she also let me hold her. She also cried in my arms. She
Right,
also ended up
right.
telling me what was upset. She also ended up telling me what was hard about the divorce. I also ended up being her closest person, and I
But here's
still
the
am.
thing, Rithia, like Tori never meant I hate you. That was just
No.
that was a word, that was a language that her, system chose to, get out the feelings of trauma that she was, processing. So that's the thing that we have to remember. And you have to try to find mantras in your head, to tell yourself like, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. Even if your kid's saying you're a fucking loser, I fucking hate you, you fucked me up, you ruin everything. Maybe
Right.
reflect on that later and try to figure out what role do you play in the
Yeah.
dynamic. Yes, of course, as always. Also, it's probably not about you right then, right there in
Right.
that moment. There's lots of factors contributing to the feeling. Again, anger never walks alone.
Mm.
This question says, I'm a mother to one child who I co-parent with their father and stepmother. I'd love to hear you talk about your experiences and or any recommendations you have about parenting a child with non-coercion when the other parent has a different style of parenting in their home.
There's a lot of either, divorced or separated parents or parents who were never with the other person, and the child has two homes, and the parent is really getting into non-authoritarian parenting, or they naturally were always like that, or they're just doing it now, and the other parent is totally coercion all the way, punishment, consequences, who knows what else. um you know the word coercion could mean so many things, but it's so much about force, and people force their children in so many different ways. You can force your children to do things by withdrawing your love. That's a huge way to coerce your child, because your child absolutely needs the attachment. So you take away your approval, you take away your attention, you take away your hugs and kisses, you take away your smile, you walk out of the room. That's coercion. And it causes so much suffering, so much pain, so much hurt in the child, so much fear. And then they fear you. And then once your child starts to fear you, now you've completely changed the relationship. Now the child can't open to you freely, can't share freely, can't show the emotions freely, because now they're scared of you. And sometimes it's very overt, and sometimes it's very covert. The parent seems really loving on the outside, and they're doing all these covert control patterns all day long, where they pull their love away when the child doesn't act or behave the way that they want. So, what if you have one household that's very coercive and one that's not? So, I definitely had a household where we were different and we believed different things, and we argued a lot. And me and my kid's dad, about how things should go and what she should be forced or not forced to do. We definitely disagreed about that. I think he would agree with me saying that. Um, and a lot of times I just couldn't convince him, right? So then all I could do was two things. One, have her one place in her life where she felt her autonomy, where she felt seen and respected all the way, where she could bring her pain and process it. And the other thing is that I was there for her to process things about her other house with her dad, uh, and make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't control the other place your child lives, you can be a place they process it. That is
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it doesn't mean you have to talk badly about your co-parent, but you can be listening, you can validate. So you say, well, my other parent made me go to my room and I hated it. And you'd be like, oh God, what did that feel like? Oh, that sounds so hard. Were you sad? Did you feel lonely? Did you want to call me? Do you want, and this is something I do with my daughter a lot. I would say, do you want me to talk to your dad about that? I would often, like, if she wanted me to, I always would. And he wouldn't necessarily take it in, but I would do it anyway. I
Mm-hmm.
would say, Tori asked me to tell you that when you blah, 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 it didn't feel good to her. And she doesn't want you to say blah, blah, blah. She doesn't want you to tickle her if she says no. She said she tried to say no and you kept tickling her. Can you please not do that? I would advocate for her, because I also wanted him to know that, like, I was tracking everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I wanted her to know I was tracking everything, and it didn't always change it. And I didn't initiate her. Like, I didn't have her come home and go, well, what happened? Did he do it again? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't do that either. I also didn't take over her process. But I would just watch for signs and wait and listen and ask questions, and she would often process what it was like over there.
Mm.
And also, sometimes he would get mad at me. He would say, "You're if I would say, she said she didn't like this and you weren't listening to her when she tried to make this boundary." And he would say, "I feel like you're telling her these things and you're causing her to do that." And I would say, "Listen, you can process about my house at your house too if you want. I
Mhm.
don't care. She can tell you all kinds of shit about me. I don't mind. I want her to talk about her feelings. We're
Mhm.
not ganging up on you. She is processing her life. She's a person."
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of people who are in separate houses, they're really scared of bad mouthing the other parent and making the child feel torn. And I understand that we're not supposed to do that. But at the same time, they have to be able to process their life and what's going
Yes.
on. And they need someone to validate it and name it like, "Oh, you felt forced. Oh, you felt lonely. Oh, you felt alone. Oh, did you feel sad? Did you feel scared?
Mhm.
Oh, what did you want to say and you didn't get to say it? What would, why don't you say it to me? Don't tickle me. Go
Mhm.
ahead, tell me not to tickle you. Like give them a chance to name the things and you name it for them if they can't."
Yeah. Obviously, any separation is going to create some sort of wound. There's going to be aftermath, right? And feelings, and it's going to be a process. But I wanted to almost get into like when you have a kid who is like in deep suffering because of the separation and the co-parent situation. You know what I'm saying? And like how the
Yeah.
parent can respond to that in a really, really healthy, supportive way. Like you said, like when you talked about it with me, you reminded me of this situation with Tori. You said that like Tori would come home sometimes with like all these feelings and then she would hit you and she'd be dealing with it. Like,
I mean, she also said things like, "I'm depressed." She said she
right,
was depressed for like an entire year or two.
right.
She was like, yeah, she seriously felt that way. She said,
Yeah,
"Life sucks and I hate my life and I hate everyone." And I think she did feel feelings of wanting to hurt herself or wanting to die.
yeah. Yeah, because that's what like that basically like that rupture of somebody's family unit, like that rupture can feel that deeply painful for them. Like that it can evoke those feelings. And when parents are in that, it's like really hard for them to know how to support their kid in that, especially if the other parent is like not on board with their suggestions or doing family therapy and things like that. Like what can we offer
I
for
just
those
want to say, I
parents?
don't think it's just about the rupture. I think it's about usually there is a parent who is in some way not able to meet the child. So half the time the child isn't feeling held. And that's
Yes,
utterly
that's
terrifying for
yeah,
children.
that's absolutely so true.
And I'm saying it in a mild way because then there's also situations where the other parent is heavily abusive. So then there's
Yes.
that. Then there's that. And that's just like so horrifying. And I wish I had good suggestions for that. Like obviously, if you're my client, we'd be doing like a big process about how to get custody, which may or may not work at all and may ruin your life because you spend all your money and
Yeah.
time going to court. And like, I mean, it just gets so complex when you
Mhm.
start really getting into what people are really living with in
Mhm.
divorce separation situations. And I'm glad we're saying it because I think it's worth mentioning how bad it can get. We're talking about just like helping a child process feelings of two houses, but then it can get very
It can get
dark.
so dark. Yeah.
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 And we don't live in a world where parents are held accountable. We don't live
Yeah.
in a society where or a system where there's any support, where there's any real organizations that really do anything that are, obviously there's like extreme situations and um kids get pulled out of houses, but besides that, that doesn't go well ever, hardly. But besides that, it's really hard to say what to do except
Mm.
to show up for your kid. Like you said, take your kid to therapy, go to therapy with your kid, force the other parent to go to therapy if you can. And if you can't, then you just have to show up for your kid and help them process, like we're saying.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of labor. It's a lot of labor. You do all the labor for everyone. You're doing it
Mhm.
for the whole family.
Yeah. It's kind of maybe what I was like trying to get at is like I want to validate that when we're talking about these complicated situations, that maybe there isn't always much more you can do than really just being that safe person for your kid and trying to encourage the other parent to support their process.
I don't know. I mean, there's also a zillion
Depends.
things you can do.
Yeah.
There's also like you can confront your ex. You can keep writing letters. You can, whatever. You can try all different things. I don't know what would work, but you can keep trying to see where you have any leverage. You can also do your own work, like keep doing your own, getting your own help with your mental health and looking at your own patterns. And, there also is a lot you can do. There's a lot
That's
you
true.
can't do.
I know. I guess I want to like find this like place where I'm like, I get it when people tell me like I feel like there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
And they might ask, our perspective, like, what else can I do? If you've
Right.
tried all those things, you feel like there's actually nothing else you can do, then I want you to know that we see that. Like I see you and I see how hard that is
Mhm.
because like you said, doing all the work for the whole family system is a massive burden on one individual person.
Yes. Yes. Well, and on the other hand, I also meet so many parents who feel like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like there's also that all the time. Like
Yeah.
my kid's impossible. Also
Yeah.
that's some people blame their children. My kid is just impossible. They're just, I can't get them to do this. And then, so there's always room for you to look at yourself more. And that always moves the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just in touch with this family that was really, really controlling their teenager, and they decided to go non-coercion, and there's been a massive shift, and the child is suddenly starting to tell about what she's going through after like, serious, very serious issues going on.
Mm.
And the issues haven't gone away, but now the child is actually telling them.
Yeah.
And so when you stop being their captor and they're like the person who's like going through their stuff and like going through their phone and taking things, when you stop being that person, then and you start just showing up, you become actually the ally, and then you can help.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, emotional connection is helping.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And you can't always fix the situation that's happening at the other house, but like do all of those things. Continue to do all of those things and look at
Right.
yourself and your process. And you're also where you get support so that you can continue to be that for your kid.
And you're also right, like so sometimes you can't control the other parent hurting your child.
Yeah.
But how many of us got validated for that? Like,
Mm.
very few of us ever got that named and validated by anyone. So
So
just saying,
true.
"Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened."
Mm.
That
And
must
like
have
you
felt
said, that you're
bad.
not, because you said that part about not bad mouthing the other parent, but don't take that to the extreme where you then invalidate your kid's experience.
Right, exactly. Yeah, or like my daughter will say, "Daddy's being really judgmental." And I'll be like, "Really? What did he say?" Like, I'll just be open. I won't be like, "No, he's not. Don't
Mm.
talk mean about your dad." I'll be like, "Really?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more."
Yeah.
I don't know. The whole separate homes thing is so sad.
It is really sad.
I mean, there's some situations where it's okay. I mean, I actually feel like we're in a really good place now in my family now. She really likes going to her dad's now.
Yeah.
They're doing good, and we're all doing good. After like many years of hard times, I feel like we're in a really good flow. That's kind of a miracle and a lot of hard work. And also, I've learned to accept the labor that I'm putting in instead of being resentful.
Yeah.
Be like, well, this is what I invested in. This is what I'm doing, instead of being like, it's not fair, which it's not fair, but this is what's happening. And there's things that her co-parent does really, really, really well. And I just try to be grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the question again. I don't know if there's anything else we can really recommend. I know they wanted your experience, which you gave, and any recommendations we have. And it's like, it's just it can be very difficult and it can be more straightforward, but there's a billion permutations. It can look so differently. It depends on the
Right.
situation, right? So we
Right.
can't really offer recommendations other than, you know, really, I hope that listeners out there that are dealing with this are okay. I hope that you're hanging in there. I hope you're doing okay yourself. I hope you have support. I hope that you feel like you can practice radical acceptance. Maybe you feel like you fucking can't and you're about to lose your shit. And so I hope you get support for that. I hope you have a co-parent who can hear you. If you don't, I hope you're able to validate that for your kid.
Right. The whole point of our podcast is when you have these disconnects with your child, you just keep seeing like Is there any way you can take off the controls and come out of the power over structure and really get on the level with your child so that they can, at the very least, share with you where they're at? And kids do it in all different ways. They don't all just tell you in words. Sometimes they just want to hang out with you or do something fun with you or cuddle with you or play games with you. It's not always like they're like, look, I'm upset about blah, 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 Sometimes you just want to be a place for connection.
This has been Your Kids Don't Suck. You can find me, Cara Tedstone, at www.caratedstonetherapy.com and on Instagram at Cara Tedstone Therapy. On my website, you'll find links to recommended readings and a link to my Reparenting with Mindfulness workbook, available now on Amazon.
You can find me, Rythea Lee, at www.rythea.com. That's RYTHEA.com. There you'll find published books, articles, and music, and parenting videos. Also, I'm on TikTok at Rythea Lee, on Instagram at Rythea Lee. You can book parent mentoring sessions with me through my website. And also I have an Advice from a Loving Bitch YouTube show that helps people heal self-hatred, and that's rythea.com/advice. It is important and essential to put our voices, Rythea and Cara, in a context. We are two white, cisgendered, straight, middle-class women living with financial and societal privilege. Because of this, our perspectives are limited and do not reflect the realities of all of our listeners. This podcast will feature guests with expertise around conscious parenting who differ in race, class, abilities, sexual orientation, and histories from us, to broaden the conversation and reflect the lives of as many people as possible. 25% of the proceeds of this podcast will go to creators of color who have been mentors and influences on our work and in our growth as parents.
If you like our show, please subscribe and stay tuned for more conscious parenting advice and insights. And check out our link tree at linktr.ee/yourkidsdon'tsuck to donate and connect with us.